If you're 55, 75 years old, slow life, spend less, be happy. What if everything you've been told about success and happiness was wrong? For decades we've been sold a dream, a life of more money, more possessions, more status. We've spent years working, buying, upgrading, chasing, and yet, deep down, doesn't it feel like something's missing? What if real happiness isn't about having more, but about needing less? There's a hidden path, one that few talk about but that many silently long for. A way to escape the exhausting cycle of endless consumption, to reclaim your time, your freedom, your peace. It's called the slow life, and it might just be the key to everything you've been looking for. Imagine waking up without stress, knowing you already have everything you truly need. Imagine feeling lighter, freer, happier, not because of what you own, but because of what you've let go. This isn't just about decluttering or saving money, it's about reclaiming your life, one choice, one breath, one simple joy at a time. If you've ever wondered if there's another way to live, a better way, you won't want to miss this. Stay with me, and if this message resonates, hit subscribe and let's begin this journey together. 1. The illusion of happiness through consumption. The ancient Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." Yet in today's world we are taught the opposite, that the more we accumulate, the more valuable we are. Society has convinced us that a bigger house, a newer car, or the latest gadgets are markers of success. But do they truly bring happiness? Or have we become prisoners of our own desires, forever chasing what can never satisfy us? The truth is, the pursuit of endless material wealth only fuels an emptiness that no possession can fill. True contentment isn't found in things, it's found in knowing when enough is enough. I once had a friend named Charlie. We were boys together, growing up in an era when happiness came from simple things, an afternoon fishing, a home-cooked meal, or a conversation under the stars. But life took Charlie in a different direction. Charlie was ambitious. He believed, as many do, that success meant money, and that money meant power, and that power would bring happiness. And so, he worked, harder than anyone I knew, long hours, 7 days a week. He built a business, made smart investments, and by the time we were in our 60s, Charlie had it all: the mansion, the sports cars, a yacht, and a bank account that most could only dream of. But something was missing. I saw it in his eyes the last time we had coffee together. He looked tired, not from work, but from chasing something that never came. He told me about his 3 ex-wives, his grown children who barely called, and the empty house he came home to every night. "I don't get it," he said, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. "I did everything right. I worked hard, I made money, I bought the best of everything." But he trailed off, staring into the distance. I waited, giving him time. "But I don't feel happy. I feel lost." I took a deep breath before I spoke. "Charlie, do you remember when we were kids? Do you remember when we didn't have a dime to our names, but we had everything? Because we had each other? Because we had time? Because we were present in our own lives?" He gave me a sad smile. "Yeah, I remember." A year later, Charlie was gone, his wealth still in the bank, his expensive things still in his home, but his time had run out. And that's when it hit me. We don't own things, things own us. Charlie spent his life collecting possessions, but in the end they were just that, objects. They couldn't hold him when he was lonely. They couldn't bring back the years he had lost. They couldn't give him peace. I tell you this because I see so many people living Charlie's life, believing the lie that happiness comes with a price tag, that fulfillment can be bought, that success means accumulation. But let me ask you, if you lost everything today, all the money, all the things, what would be left? Would you still be rich in love, in friendship, and memories? Or would you find that you had spent a lifetime chasing the wrong dream? If you've ever questioned the meaning of happiness, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and tell me, what's one thing that has truly made you happy in life? Let's talk. Let's reflect. Because sometimes the biggest realizations come when we stop chasing and start truly living. 2. Decluttering for a lighter, freer life. The great philosopher Lao Tzu once said, "To attain knowledge, add things every day. To attain wisdom, subtract things every day." In our youth, we chase after possessions, believing they define our success. But as we grow older, we begin to understand that letting go is the key to true freedom. History tells us of Diogenes, the Greek philosopher who owned almost nothing. When he saw a boy drinking water with his hands, he threw away his only cup, realizing even that was unnecessary. The lesson? The fewer things we carry, the lighter our souls become. I once knew a woman named Margaret, a dear friend of mine from childhood. She lived in the same house for over 50 years, a beautiful but cluttered home filled with memories. Margaret had always been a collector of books, trinkets, letters, photographs, souvenirs from trips long past. Every shelf, every drawer, every closet was packed. "These things tell my story," she would say. "They remind me of who I was." Then one day, life threw her an unexpected turn. Her doctor gave her news she never thought she'd hear. Her heart was failing. It wasn't immediate, but it was serious enough to make her rethink everything. "I need to downsize," she told me one afternoon, sitting at her kitchen table, surrounded by boxes she had barely touched in years. "But every time I try, I get stuck. Every object holds a piece of me." I reached across the table and held her hand. "Margaret," I said gently, "your memories aren't in these things. They're in you. And they're in the people who love you." With a heavy sigh, she agreed to try. We started small, one drawer at a time. At first, every item seemed essential. But then, as we sorted, she realized how much she had been carrying, not just physically but emotionally. Old clothes that no longer fit, gifts from people she had lost touch with, even boxes of unopened items from years past. And then there were the hardest things. Letters from loved ones who had passed, tokens of dreams that never came to be. With each item she let go of, she cried, she laughed, she remembered, and then she felt lighter. By the time we were done, she had transformed not just her home, but herself. "I feel like I can breathe again," she told me, sitting in her now spacious living room. "Why did I hold on to all this for so long?" I smiled. "Because you thought it was your past. But the past isn't in these objects, Margaret, it's in your heart. And that's something you'll never lose." A few years later, Margaret passed away. But not before she gave me one last piece of wisdom. "Tell people," she said, "that the real treasures in life aren't things. They're the moments, the people, the love we share, and those don't take up any space at all." Now, I pass this lesson to you. Look around your home. Look at the things you've held on to. Ask yourself, do they bring you peace, or do they weigh you down? If you've ever struggled with letting go, I'd love to hear your story. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about what truly matters. Because sometimes less isn't just more. Less is everything. 3. Living simply in a complicated world. The Roman philosopher Seneca once wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more who is poor." In today's world, this wisdom feels more relevant than ever. We are constantly told that success is measured by what we own, the newest phone, the biggest house, the most luxurious lifestyle. But this endless race never leads to fulfillment. Take the story of Leo Tolstoy's fable, "How much land does a man need?" A man is promised all the land he can walk in a day if he returns before sunset. Greedy, he rushes forward, claiming more and more, only to collapse and die before returning. In the end, all the land he truly needed was enough to bury him. True wealth is not about accumulation. It is about contentment. I remember the moment I realized I didn't need more to be happy. It wasn't some grand epiphany. It was a conversation with a man I hardly knew. I was sitting on a park bench watching the world rush by. I had worked hard all my life, saved what I could, yet I often wondered if I had done enough. Was my life too simple? Had I missed out by not chasing after more? Then, a man in an expensive suit sat down next to me. His shoulders sagged, his face looked tired, and he rubbed his temples like someone carrying a heavy burden. After a while he spoke. "Mind if I ask you something?" "Go ahead," I said. He sighed, loosening his tie. "When does it stop?" "Huh," I raised an eyebrow. "When does what stop?" "The chase," he muttered. "I've spent my whole life running after more money, more recognition, a bigger house, a better car, but every time I reach a goal, there's always another. I tell myself just one more promotion, one more raise, but it never ends." I nodded. I knew that feeling all too well. "And what do you have now?" He hesitated. "A big house I'm never in, a car I don't even enjoy driving, a family that barely sees me because I'm always working. I have everything I ever wanted and somehow I feel like I have nothing." I looked at him for a long moment before speaking. I once knew a man who spent his whole life climbing a ladder, only to realize too late that it was leaning against the wrong wall. He gave a sad chuckle. "That's exactly how I feel." I gestured to the park, the trees, the breeze, the sound of children laughing in the distance. This is what matters. Being present, having time, finding joy in the simple things, not the race, not the stuff, but life itself. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, almost to himself, "I don't even know what brings me joy anymore." "Then it's time to find out," I told him. I never saw him again after that day, but I often wonder if he ever stopped running, if he ever slowed down long enough to realize that happiness isn't something you chase, it's something you create. And now I ask you, are you running toward happiness or away from it? Let's talk in the comments. What's one simple thing that brings you joy? Because in the end it's the simplest things that make life truly rich. 4. Appreciating the little things. The great poet Rumi once said, "Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond." In a world obsessed with grand achievements, we often forget that life's true beauty lies in the smallest of moments. In ancient Japan, the concept of wabi-sabi teaches us to embrace imperfection, simplicity, and the fleeting nature of life. The worn edges of an old cup, the quiet rustling of leaves, the way sunlight dances on a wooden floor, these are the things that whisper the essence of happiness. We don't need more to feel rich, we just need to pay attention. For years I believed that happiness was something you chased, that it was hidden in big moments, promotions, celebrations, life-changing events. But I was wrong. I realized this one afternoon sitting on a weathered old bench by the lake near my home. I had been coming to this lake for decades. When I was younger, I brought my children here, watching them splash in the water, their laughter ringing through the trees. Later I came alone, finding solace in the ripples of the water when life became heavy. That afternoon as I sat there, an old man approached and asked if he could sit beside me. He had a kind face, the sort of face that had seen much but carried no bitterness. We sat in silence for a long while, listening to the birds, feeling the gentle wind against our skin. Then, out of nowhere he spoke. "You ever notice how people don't sit anymore?" I looked at him, a little puzzled. "What do you mean?" He chuckled softly. "They're always moving, always looking at their phones, rushing from one place to another. No one just sits anymore. No one notices the way the light changes in the afternoon, or how the trees sway when the wind picks up." I nodded, realizing how right he was. "Everyone's looking for happiness somewhere else," he smiled. "And it's been right here all along." We sat for another hour, not saying much, just watching, listening, being. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something deep in my bones. That old man was right. We forget to see what's right in front of us. The warmth of a fresh cup of coffee, the feel of a loved one's hand in ours, the quiet magic of a familiar place. These are the things we take for granted, until they're gone. I never saw that man again, but I still think of him whenever I visit that lake, whenever I sit on that bench. And now I ask you, when was the last time you truly stopped and appreciated something small yet beautiful? Share your thoughts in the comments. What little thing brings you joy? Because sometimes the smallest moments are the ones that matter most. 5. Breaking free from consumerism's grip. The Buddha once said, "Desire is the root of all suffering," and yet, modern life is built on desire. Every advertisement whispers that we are not enough, that happiness is just one more purchase away. But has it ever truly worked? In ancient times, Diogenes the cynic lived with nothing but a cloak and a bowl. When he saw a boy drinking water with his hands, he laughed, realizing he didn't even need the bowl. He understood a truth that many of us forget: the less you need, the freer you are. But in today's world, can we ever break free from the grip of wanting more? I used to love shopping, not because I needed things, but because buying something new felt good. It was a little thrill, a moment of excitement, a distraction from whatever was missing in my life at the time. Then one day I stood in my kitchen, staring at the dozens of unopened boxes from yet another sale. Clothes I never wore, gadgets I didn't need, trinkets I had bought just because they were on sale. I sighed and sat down, overwhelmed. How had I let it get this far? That night, I had a conversation with my granddaughter that changed everything. She was 8 years old, wise beyond her years, and visiting for the weekend. As she played on the floor, she looked up at me and asked, "Grandma, why do you have so much stuff?" I laughed. "I guess I just like shopping," she tilted her head. "But do you use it all?" I hesitated. "Well, not really." She frowned, thinking hard. Then she said something so simple yet so profound. "When I get too many toys, Mommy says I stop playing with them because I forget which ones are special." Her words hit me like a freight train. That night I sat in my bedroom and looked around. How many of these things had I forgotten? How much had I bought just to fill space, physical space, emotional space? The next morning I made a decision. For the first time in years, I challenged myself to buy nothing for a whole month. No online orders, no shopping trips, no impulse buys. At first it was hard. I felt restless. I caught myself reaching for my phone, scrolling through sales, craving that little dopamine hit of a new purchase. But the more I resisted, the more I realized I didn't miss any of it. By the end of the month, something remarkable happened. I felt lighter, clearer, free. I had broken a habit I didn't even realize was controlling me. And in the process, I rediscovered the joy of using what I already had, appreciating what I already owned, and valuing what truly mattered. Now, I ask you, have you ever bought something just for the sake of buying? Have you ever felt trapped by the need for more? Try the challenge. Go a day, then a week, then longer without buying anything unnecessary. See how it feels. And if you've ever struggled with the grip of consumerism, tell me your story in the comments below, because sometimes the greatest wealth is learning to want less. 6. Filling your life with meaningful activities. The ancient philosopher Aristotle once said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Yet in today's world, many of us fill our days with distractions, mindless scrolling, endless television, fleeting pleasures that leave us feeling empty. Consider the story of Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who ruled Rome but still found time each day to write in his journal, reflecting on life and virtue. He understood that how we spend our time shapes who we become, and in the end, it is not wealth or status that defines a life well lived, but the depth of our experiences. There was a time in my life when I didn't know what to do with myself. Retirement had come, my children had grown, and suddenly the days stretched out before me like an empty road. For years my life had been structured: work, responsibilities, routine. But now I had all the time in the world, and I didn't know how to fill it. I did what many do. I filled my time with television, news, errands that didn't need running. I scrolled through my phone, reading about lives more interesting than mine. But at night, as I lay in bed, I felt something missing. Then one afternoon, as I was cleaning out the attic, I found an old wooden box. Inside was something I hadn't seen in decades: my sketchbooks. Pages filled with drawings from my youth, pencil sketches of faces, landscapes, little moments I had once captured with my own hands. I sat down on the floor, flipping through them, my fingers tracing the lines. I had loved to draw. As a boy I could sit for hours with nothing but a pencil and a blank page. But life had a way of pulling me away. Work, bills, responsibilities. I told myself I had no time for hobbies, no time for things that didn't matter. But now, here I was, with nothing but time. At night I picked up a pencil again. My hands were slower, a little less steady, but as I sketched, something stirred inside me, a joy I had forgotten, a sense of purpose that had nothing to do with money or success, just the simple pleasure of creating something, of doing something that fed my soul. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. I found myself drawing every morning, just like I had as a boy. I even started showing my sketches to my grandchildren, teaching them how to see the world through an artist's eyes. And do you know what? I have never felt more alive. We spend so much of our lives chasing after things that don't last. Money, possessions, fleeting entertainment. But in the end, what truly matters is how we spend our time, what we create, and the connections we build. So I ask you, is there something you once loved but left behind? A passion, a hobby, a dream? If so, maybe it's time to pick it up again. Tell me in the comments what's something you've always wanted to do but never made time for. Let's start living, not just passing time. 7. Financial freedom through simplicity. The ancient Chinese philosopher Confucius once said, He who will not economize will have to agonize. Even thousands of years ago, wisdom taught us that financial peace is not about having more, it's about needing less. Consider Socrates, who once stood in the bustling Athenian marketplace and marveled, "How many things I can do without." In a world that constantly tempts us to spend, the real power lies in knowing what is truly necessary. Financial freedom isn't about wealth, it's about choices. The choice to live simply, to prioritize what matters, and to free yourself from the burden of excess. For most of my life, I believed what they told me, that success was measured in square footage, in bank balances, in things. So I worked hard. I built a career, made a name for myself, and with each promotion I upgraded my life. A bigger house, a newer car, vacations that looked good in pictures but left me exhausted. And yet, despite it all, I always felt trapped. The mortgage payments, the maintenance costs, the endless cycle of keeping up, it was like running on a treadmill, faster and faster but never getting anywhere. Then, everything changed. It wasn't some grand revelation, no sudden tragedy that forced me to rethink my life. It was something much simpler. One evening, after a long day, I found myself sitting alone in my giant house. The rooms were beautiful but empty. The furniture was expensive but untouched. The silence was deafening. And that's when it hit me. I had spent decades working for a lifestyle I didn't even enjoy. I had bought a house but never built a home. I had earned money but never bought time. Time for family, for health, for simple pleasures. The next day I made a decision. I sold the house, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I downsized to a smaller, humbler home, one where every room was lived in, every chair sat in, every moment cherished. With fewer bills to pay, I stopped worrying about money. I started traveling, not to impress anyone but to experience the world. I took long walks, spent time with my grandchildren, rediscovered the joy of living without financial stress. And for the first time in my life I felt free. We are told we need more to be happy, but the truth is, we often need less. Less debt, less clutter, less pressure. Because real wealth isn't about money, it's about freedom. So tell me, what would financial freedom look like for you? Have you ever realized you didn't need as much as you thought? Let's talk in the comments. Sometimes, the first step toward freedom is simply letting go. 8. Prioritizing health and well-being. The ancient physician Hippocrates, often called the father of medicine, once said, "Let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food." Long before modern science, wisdom taught us that what we eat, how we move, and how we rest determine the quality of our lives. Consider the centenarians of Okinawa, Japan. People who live past 100, not because of medicine, but because of their simple lifestyles. They walk daily, eat whole foods, and value rest. They understand something we've forgotten. Longevity isn't about pills and procedures, it's about balance. The question is, in today's fast world, are we making our health a priority? I was once like many of you, always busy, always pushing forward, convinced I could deal with my health later. I ate whatever was convenient, skipped exercise because I was too tired, and told myself that sleep was for the weak. And then, life gave me a warning. It was a regular checkup, nothing serious, just a routine visit to the doctor. I expected the usual, lose a few pounds, watch the salt, see you next year. But this time the doctor looked at me differently. He sighed and folded his hands. "George, if you don't change your lifestyle now, you won't have a later." I laughed, assuming he was exaggerating. But then he showed me the numbers. My blood pressure was sky high, my cholesterol through the roof, my heart working harder than it should. "You're a walking time bomb," he said. "You might feel fine today, but this won't last. Something will give." I left the office in shock. I wasn't ready to hear that. I had grandkids to watch grow up, places I still wanted to see, conversations I hadn't had yet. I wasn't done living. At night I made a choice, not for the doctor, not for the numbers, for me. I started walking every morning. At first just to the mailbox, then a little farther. The first week was painful, my legs ached, my breath was short, but I kept going. I changed my diet, swapped fast food for real. I started paying attention to what my body needed, instead of what was easy. And something incredible happened. I began to feel alive again. Food tasted better, my mind felt clearer, my body, though older, felt stronger. The more I cared for myself, the more energy I had for the things that mattered, playing with my grandkids, laughing with my wife, truly enjoying the life I was given. And now, years later, I sit here grateful, not because I made a drastic change, but because I made small, daily choices that saved my life. So tell me, what's one small change you can make today for your health? Because trust me, the best gift you can give yourself and those you love is more time. Let's talk in the comments. What's stopping you from putting your health first? 9. Reflecting on life's journey. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." We spend so much of our time chasing success, accumulating things, and worrying about the future that we forget to truly live. The ancient Stoics believed in memento mori, the reminder that life is short and should not be wasted. When we reflect on our lives, we do not remember the cars we drove or the money we made. We remember the love we gave, the wisdom we shared, the moments that made us feel alive. I once knew a man named Henry. A quiet man, a thinker. He had spent his entire life working, providing, saving for the future. A responsible man, no doubt. But in the end, he realized something too late. Henry was a man of schedules. He woke up at the same time every day, worked long hours, and planned everything meticulously. "One day, I'll have time for the things I love," he used to say. "When I retire, I'll travel. I'll read those books. I'll sit by the lake and just enjoy the quiet." But that day never came the way he expected. One morning he was diagnosed with a heart condition. The doctors told him he had limited time left. All those years of waiting, and suddenly, there wasn't much future left to wait for. I remember sitting with him on his porch one evening, watching the sunset. It was a simple moment, the sky painted in shades of orange and purple, the air cool against our skin. He sighed and looked at me. "You know what's funny?" he said, shaking his head. "I worked my whole life thinking I was preparing for happiness, but happiness was never in the future. It was in moments like this, moments I never stopped to notice." He paused, his voice heavy with regret. "I was always chasing time. But time isn't something you chase, it's something you spend wisely while you have it." Henry passed away a few months later, but before he left, he gave me one last piece of advice. Don't wait for a special occasion to enjoy life. Every day is an occasion. Every moment is a gift. Use them well. Now, I pass his wisdom to you. What moments in your life do you cherish most? If you had one day left, how would you spend it? Take a moment to reflect, and if you have a memory, one that truly mattered, share it in the comments. Because in the end, life is not about the years we live, but the moments we truly embrace. 10. Leaving a legacy of simplicity. The ancient Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu once said, "When you realize nothing is lacking, the whole world belongs to you." True wealth is not in what we own but in what we pass on, not in gold or possessions but in wisdom, kindness, and love. History tells us of Diogenes, the Greek philosopher who lived with nothing but a lantern and a barrel, yet he was rich in knowledge. He laughed at kings and merchants who hoarded wealth, for he knew that the true measure of a person is not what they have, but what they leave behind in the hearts of others. So, I ask you, what legacy will you leave? I remember my grandfather, Sam, a quiet man who never owned much but left behind more than any inheritance could buy. He lived in a small, simple house on the edge of town. No fancy furniture, no expensive collections, just the essentials. Yet, his home was always full of life. Family gathered in his kitchen for stories, friends dropped by for coffee, and children played in his garden, where he grew tomatoes and wildflowers when I was a boy. I once asked him why he never wanted more, why he didn't buy a bigger house or a newer car like other people. He chuckled, ruffling my hair. "Son, I could fill my house with things, but then where would I put the people?" At the time I didn't fully understand, but years later when Grandpa Sam passed away, his words finally made sense. As we cleaned out his house, there wasn't much. Some old clothes, a worn-out chair, a few simple tools. Nothing of great value in the eyes of the world. Yet what he left behind was immeasurable. He left behind stories, memories of long talks on his front porch, lessons about patience from his garden, the warmth of his laughter on a cold winter night. He left behind wisdom, the kind that isn't written in books, but is passed down through love, through example, through the quiet way he lived. And most of all, he left behind a family that knew what truly mattered. No one fought over his possessions because there was no fortune to divide. Instead, we sat together, sharing the stories he had told us, feeling the love he had poured into us. That was his real legacy, not things, but a life well lived, a family well loved. Now I ask you, what will your legacy be? Will your children and grandchildren remember the things you owned, or the time you spent with them, the money you left behind, or the lessons you taught them? Share your thoughts in the comments. What's one lesson you hope to pass on to future generations? Because in the end, the most valuable inheritance isn't wealth, it's wisdom, love, and the simple joys of life. Living a slow life isn't always the easiest path, but it is one of the most rewarding. In a world that constantly pushes us to do more, buy more, and move faster, choosing to slow down is a quiet act of wisdom and courage. It's a reminder that life isn't about how much we accumulate, but about how deeply we live. When we step away from the endless cycle of consumption, we gain something far more valuable: freedom, peace, and true happiness. We find joy in simple moments, meaning in everyday experiences, and clarity in what truly matters. So, what about you? Are you ready to embrace a slower, more intentional life? If this message resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What's one small way you've slowed down and found more joy? And if you haven't already, subscribe for more insights on living well, aging gracefully, and making the most of every moment. Thank you for being here. Let's walk this journey together.